Hey, it's Mr. Break. I've made the decision to deliver you a lesson with the utmost precision. I've got some content here that I'd like to share with you. You'll want to write down these notes about area. I bet you thought I was going to do that during the entire lesson. Nah. But that is your super epic introduction for the week. It's probably took me about 16 takes to get that, so I hope you're very pleased. Cool. So we're going to look at area. I know that we talked about this probably like 3 months ago. Remember, we all made our area out of our own tiles in the classroom, and I went around and invaded everyone's personal space, didn't let you share areas. Yeah, that stuff. So we're just going to do a quick review of that because we have to understand area before we go into volume. Okay? Cool. So first of all, make sure you have your notebooks because you need to write this stuff down. So when you're going through the assignment later, you'll not have to go back to the video all the time. Area is the measure of the space inside a shape. Pause the video and write that down. And you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen here, this is very important. We measure area in square units. We also use area to talk about two-dimensional or flat shapes. See this shape right here? It is flat, so we would measure it using area. A piece of paper is flat, we would measure it with area. So to measure area, or examples of area, you've definitely seen stuff like this before. This shape is 3 units tall here, or its width is 3 units, and its length is 5 units. So we have 3 rows of 5. I went ahead and numbered each square unit in there to show that we have 15 square units. You can also do that by doing length times width. Do 3 times 5, and we'll get 15. Now notice since there's not any label after the 5 or the 3, since it just says 3 and 5, we just know that those are really units. We don't know what kind of units, we just know they're units. So our 15 is actually going to be 15 units squared. And I know some of you like to put square units instead. That's totally fine. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. Both those are absolutely correct. So for this one, same dealio. We're just going to do length times width. And remember, we do that because we know that, hey, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 square units in that one row. And so we have the 6 there. And we know that we have actually, let me use a different color for that. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those different rows. So we have 6 rows of 9, which gives us a total of 54 what? Oh, inches squared, or 54 square inches. Cool? Cool. Now this is where we get into volume though. So all that area should be review. Volume you actually did with Mr. Montfort a little bit last year. But what you didn't do with Mr. Montfort is fractional edge lengths. So after this video, the next one we'll talk about fractional edge lengths and volume and how that changes things. But for now, let's just do a quick review of volume. So here, Mr. Break has made a very delicious looking 3-layer cake. And you know, we can't say it's a 3-layer cake and only have white cake there. So let's make this layer strawberry. Let's get some, mango, because who eats orange cake? Let's say it's mango flavored. And then of course, lemon. Honestly, I would not eat this cake. It sounds terrible. So if we are talking about the top of this cake, which is going to have purple frosting on it, beautiful and delicious. Oh, I can't stand to look at that. Okay, so we're talking about the top of this cake. if we're talking about just the top of this cake and we want to know how many square inches it is, we're talking about area, right? So let's go ahead and figure that out. If Mr. Brake told you that, hey, this side of the cake is 5 inches, and then he told you the cake is 2 inches wide, we have our length and we have our width. So you just multiply and you say, oh, well, the area of the top is 5 times 2, which is 10 inches squared. Cool. So the area of the top, which I was trying to color purple, but it looked terrible, is just 10 inches squared. Now remember, volume you haven't had this definition in a minute. Volume is how much space an object takes up total. So how much space an entire object takes up. And the big difference here is that when we're talking about area, remember it's flat things, but when we're talking about volume, we're talking about three-dimensional figures, so boxes, desks, entire rooms, like we're talking about, how much space we could take up in that room, how much we could fill it up with something. Anyways, so if we're talking about the top of the shape, we're doing area. But if we want to know how much space this whole thing takes up, we're going to need to see how many layers of 10 inches there are. So here on the side, I've made it very clear with our 3-layer cake that we have 3 inches of cake here in height. This is like one single piece of cake. So if we're looking at just this top layer here, well, we have 1 inch. So we'd have 10 cubic inches in this layer, because we have one layer of 10. But then we have another. So we have 10 again. And then we have another. So 10 again. So what's really going on here is that we have our length times our width times our height. Or 5 times 2 times 3, which will give us 30 inches. And this is where things are different between volume and area again, is this is a 3-dimensional figure, so instead of putting a 2 up there, we're putting a 3 because it is cubic inches. If we were to cut this figure up to count what we're measuring here, it would be little cubes, not squares like an area. Cool. So we'll have a Zoom meeting to do some practice problems later this week that will have to do with fractional edge lengths. And I'll also put out a video just for that. But for now, this is all you'll need to know to do your homework. And just to recap real quick, remember when you're doing area, that's for 2-dimensional figures, flat figures. That's just length times width. And then when you're doing volume, so 3D shapes, that's going to be length times width times how tall that shape is, times its height. Make sure you have those written down in your notes. Cool. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, remember that you can message me on Remind, Schoology, and we can set up Zoom meetings if you need them. Cool.